Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Ronald Reagan's sense of humor, wrote presidential biographer Lou Cannon, was a key to his character, and his willingness to poke fun at himself a vital component of his popularity. In this podcast, we take a look at how President Reagan used humor to ease a crowd and to make a point, and to have fun while doing it. President Reagan never ceased to poke fun of his own age. He joked he was as old as Moses, that he knew some of our founding fathers, and that every birthday was an anniversary celebration of his 39th birthday.
Now, I know that a lot of you have been having some fun with my advancing years. You even tied my recent surgery to my age. Well, I gotta be honest with you. I had that same operation when I was young, and it felt so good I wanted to have it done again before I was too old.
In his memoirs, President Reagan wrote that his time in Hollywood, and specifically his time touring the country for General Electric, became an apprenticeship for someone who'd someday enter public life. But that didn't stop him from poking fun of his Hollywood side either.
You know, when I first started in my present job, I'd sometimes put together in my mind my own dream cabinet. You know, John Wayne as Secretary of State, Clint Eastwood at Defense, Jack Benny as Secretary of Treasury, Groucho Marx at Education.
While we know that he quipped, kidded, and bantered in nearly every White House meeting, he also used humor to express very fundamental ideas. For example, in the 1980 campaign, when seeking to find the right metaphor to illustrate our nation's current economic crisis, Ronald Reagan himself drafted this line: "A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his." And the jokes didn't stop on Pennsylvania Avenue. A few weeks after the inauguration, President Reagan delivered remarks at the annual salute to Congress. Not a particular fan of this body of government, the newly christened president nonetheless graciously accepted the invitation and, during remarks, joked,
I can define middle-aged. That's when you're faced with two temptations and you choose the one that'll get you home at 9 o'clock.
This reminds me of a story, was a famous line President Reagan used in many of his speeches to lead into a joke. He could tie any event into a fun, lighthearted story.
Speaking of horses reminds me of a story. When you're my age, everything reminds you of a story. Seems that this fellow was a great racing fan and was planning to go to the races on the weekend. And then for 3 nights straight, he dreamed of the number 5. So when he got to the track, he took that program and he went right to the 5th race and looked down to the 5th horse. And there it was, and the horse was named 5 by 5. So he saved his bundle till that race, and he bet it all on that race. And sure enough, the horse came in 5th. but
Even in the face of adversity, President Reagan was able to use humor to put people at ease. During the 1981 assassination attempt on his life, with an assassin's bullet just millimeters from his heart, President Reagan used his unique, God-given skill to convey calm and assurance to those desperately working to save his life, when he looked at his doctors just prior to surgery and joked, "I hope you are all Republicans." And of course, to his beloved wife Nancy, "Honey, I forgot to duck." While recovering post-surgery, he even wrote a note to one of his nurses saying, "If I had this much attention in Hollywood, I would have stayed there."
The society we heard from is made up of millions of compassionate Americans and their children from college age to kindergarten. As a matter of fact, as evidence of that, I have a letter with me. Letter came from Peter Sweeney. He's in the 2nd grade in the Riverside School in Rockville Center. And he said, "I hope you get well quick, or you might have to make a speech in your pajamas." And he added a postscript. P.S. If you have to make a speech in your pajamas, I warned you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this Inside the Reagan Library video. See you soon.